Hi, hello, how are you all doing? My name is Irfan. I am the head of partnerships of Green Ribbon Group, and I'll be your host for today. Welcome to another episode of the Mindful Conversations, where we touch on mental health as well as topics around it. The Mindful Conversations is a series of podcasts that is produced by the Green Ribbon Group. And today I have a guest here with me, Ishaq Vadillo.
Well, my name is Ishaq Vadillo. I am one of the co-founders of ChaCha Kombucha. Have been a personal trainer, fitness trainer for the past 8 years. Have been a group fitness instructor for the past 6 years, and am someone who really pays attention to health and wellness, and strongly advocate for men's physical and mental health.
That's great. Yeah, as you can see, a very, very fit person here compared to myself. But okay, anyways, right. So as we all know that this month is November, and with November, it comes around with a certain theme annually, which is called Movember. Have you heard of Movember
Yes,
before?
I have.
What do you know about Movember?
It is where you allow your mustache to grow out to spread awareness for men's health. Normally, to focus much more on testicular cancer, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, some trendy thing that people like to do, growing their mustaches out.
Right. So what I have here is that for your information, Movember is an annual event involving the growing of mustaches. You're right, which I'm terribly failing at.
Me too, but not really.
During the month of November to raise awareness about men's mental health, prostate cancer, testicular cancer, men's general health, as well as men's suicide. Right, so shall we start? I can start with a question with you. As a man, we're having like a man-to-man talk.
Yes.
Somewhat right now.
All right.
Okay. But how often you have had conversations around mental health among your circle of bros, for example? Because for me, I'll be very honest, it's very foreign. I don't speak about it with my friends. So what?
Yeah, I think
how's
for
yours?
guys, there's a big stigma around like sharing your feelings because it makes you look a little soft, especially when
Yeah.
you're around other guys. If you sometimes show your vulnerability, guys like to, even if it's just joking around, they'll like to kind of expose you a little bit and make a joke out of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And this becomes increasingly difficult for men to share about their kind of emotions and their vulnerabilities, whereas like all of us as humans, we all experience these vulnerabilities and these insecurities, and it's something that's not often spoken about, but slowly I think men are starting to open up in a way that doesn't. It's not really so much about showing their weaknesses anymore. It's like being vulnerable is actually a form of strength. You don't have to be this like strong masculine guy, even if that's what is like. It's good to want to be that strong and masculine. However, it's also good to be vulnerable, and it's also good to share those emotions and talk to another guy about something. So for me and most other guys, we don't really talk about it as much. However, for me personally, if any guy does want to be a little bit vulnerable or a little bit or share a little bit, it's like I'll always accept it and try my best not to impose my own kind of how do I say this? Try not to impose my own understanding of how they are. I like to ask them questions and let them kind of tell me how they are and how they're doing.
Right.
Yeah.
So you said like it's quite common already, like in your circle where you speak about mental health, it's okay to be vulnerable and such.
Yes.
But like, how do we start? Like how do we make sure, or at least assure our friends or this friend that, dude, you can talk to me for anything.
I personally think that like first of all, you have to be okay with being vulnerable. This
Yeah.
sometimes, if you're around people in your life who don't make it okay for you to share things, then I think what would be best is just to distance yourself a little bit from them, and then talk to people that are okay and like not so much accepting of like you just offloading anything, but much more just people that are willing to listen to you and people that are willing to raise you up.
Yeah.
It's like as we grow into our newer selves, we have to kind of distance ourselves from the things that keep us in our old self, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
in order for us to evolve.
Yeah.
So So yeah, I think that starting with it, just like you just have to start with a really nice open conversation,
Mm-hmm.
just like initiate it at the beginning, and
Mm-hmm.
then yes, it might be difficult for a guy to share at first, but then you will start to get used to it, and then also approach people who you not just anyone, someone whose opinion you can value, and someone who will
Yeah,
give you constructive feedback
yeah,
as to how to move forward.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
So you need that rapport first
Yes.
before you start talking about it, because if not, people will just like try to like go back to the cave, and they will be like, why are you asking this question to me? It is
Yeah.
personal and things
One
like
thing
that.
is for sure is like staying alone and just like sulking about it won't
Yeah,
do anything for you.
yeah,
It's good to be around out. It's good to be socializing with other people. It's good to talk to others about these things and get an idea instead of so much like trying to offload your opinions or your understanding. Why not try asking questions to other people and getting an
mm,
understanding of how they're feeling,
mm-hmm.
and then from there I think if men did share more about this, we would realize that actually a lot of guys go through a lot of
Yeah,
things all the
yeah,
time. There's this big new thing about like toxic masculinity, but
yeah,
there's also something that's like if that is the case, then you will just get the opposite of masculinity, if
mm-hmm.
you know what I mean. If
Mm-hmm.
men aren't
Mm-hmm.
able to be masculine,
Yeah,
and masculinity is not just about like being strong on the exterior.
yeah,
Being strong inside allows you to expose yourself, because
yeah,
exposing yourself, you have nothing to hide once you're strong internally. And once you're strong internally and you have everything kind of sorted out, and but you'll never really have everything sorted out, but once you're strong on the inside, your external becomes like you're okay with anything. You're
yeah,
okay with
yeah,
talking to people about it.
yeah,
You're okay with how they'll respond to it in any way, because you know yourself.
yeah.
You know yourself inside and out.
Yeah, your confidence will be raised, your self-esteem
Exactly.
feels much better.
Yeah.
But what we're talking right now is much more on the angle of, the people around us, the peer support, the environment that we live in, that can either hinder or that can also promote mental health conversation around us. But I believe that things like this also starts from the family. Like in my own experience, I'm the eldest out of the three boys, and for the first 10 years, it was just us, and then I had a little sister. But even so, after that, me as in I would say like a very quite conservative Malay family, like we don't speak about mental health over my 24, 25 until I work here,
Hmm.
you know. So, what if you're comfortable, if you're okay, like how was your experience, growing up in your family? Was there conversations about mental, or no, maybe not specifically mental health, but things like, are you okay, asking like just how are you among the family, how is it?
Well, so I actually grew up in a mixed household. So I'm half
Yeah.
Spanish, half Malay.
Mm-hmm.
And but I grew up in Europe, and
Mm-hmm.
I grew up very much around Europeans,
Mm-hmm.
who, as you know, like Europeans are much more forward. They're much more
Mm.
expressive. They're
Yeah.
much more, I guess, like poetic in their kind of expression towards like things like their loved ones, or people they love. They'll express it. They'll let it out
Mm, mm,
externally
mm, mm.
very much. And it's a very different relationship that I'll have to my Asian family. My Asian
Right.
side is they're not that expressive. They still, you still do get that underlying sense of like duty and responsibility to the
Right.
family, but in terms of expression and vocalizing their love, they're not as vocal as, let's say, like my Spanish family.
Yeah.
And so I always, because I grew up majority in Europe, I was always very much around that like loving, expressive, caring. So I
Mm.
became that in a way.
Yeah.
Contrasted to how my Asian family is like when I try to express that to them,
Mm-hmm.
it's like you can feel they're kind of shy, but at the same time they love
They
that me
appreciate
and
it.
my siblings are this expressive. When we tell
Yeah.
them we love them, when we
Yeah.
tell them that we care about them, we're there for them. It's
Yeah.
like even if they don't know how to respond so much because they aren't so attuned to that form of
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
expression, they can still understand it deep down, and you can see it on their facial
Yeah.
expressions. If you call them beautiful, if you call them strong and responsible, it's like you can see it in their eyes that it's something that it is foreign to hear it for them, but
Yeah.
they do appreciate it
Yeah.
at the end of the day. So my experience with it was like we were always very open. We were always very open, talking about our feelings,
Right.
talking about our difficulties, our vulnerabilities, And yes, there is always an element with like siblings and family that you do kind of want to hold, keep away. You don't want kind of your family to get in there, because if once they're in there with you, then they'll start trying to tell you like how to do things, and you don't really want that. And this is like your ego telling you like, no, like don't change. But actually, like, what you're craving for is change. What you're craving for is someone to just say like, you can do this, you can do the things that you already want to confirm with yourself that you can do.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because I forgot the fact that you mixed. So like the fact that maybe like in one end, like you grew up with like a different kind of environment, and then in another, like there's a different kind of environment. Like how do some people like have this different kind of persona when they are around with different kind of people. But it's really nice like you to see like how like you keep carrying on like your expressiveness, the showing the love to the family, even through the Asian families. Because not to say that that the Europeans are much better because you are more expressive, you talk about mental health. I believe that's just progression. In terms of cultural evolution as well.
Yeah.
But I think people in Malaysia, families in Malaysia are going through to the right direction. Like we're talking about mental health, even more so as of now.
So if you look at like the difference between like an Asian household and a Western household is, the Western household is much more focused on the individual. So like, you are someone who like, you're a bird that leaves the nest. You go out into the world and you face it and then you conquer it. That's kind of the Western story. It's like the Western story of every entrepreneur. They go out by themselves and do it. But the Asian mentality is very much centered around the group. So it's like family is everything. It's very family orientated, which makes a much stronger individual in the sense where like, you're not alone out in the world. You're going out with your family. And if you have like 30 members of your family backing you up financially, emotionally, spiritually, it's like you can do anything. You can embark on any journey from a place of strength. However, if the household is, let's say, in a way like spiritually or emotionally corrupted, in the sense where like if let's say the mother has insecurities about herself and then she offloads it onto the daughter, or same thing if the father offloads his insecurities onto the son, this creates a ripple effect because of the dependence on the family as a support system. And so it becomes very important for the Asian household to support their kids in a way that isn't so much just pushing them towards an expected outcome for themselves. It's like you're pushing the child or your offspring to go in a direction for themselves. And this comes down to a very in-depth understanding of asking questions and really trying to get in tune with how this person that you've raised is, how they are, because eventually they have to become their own self. They have to break away from the family. They have to break away from the family way of thinking, or else they're just going to keep following exactly what the parents say, which they can. However, then they will feel like they are just living their parents' lives in a way. And so this is the difference between the Western household and the Asian household. Both of them have their ups and downs. But I think in what is missing sometimes in the Asian household is particularly that individuation and that place of being strong by yourself, without being emotionally, spiritually dependent on your superiors, your parents, or your siblings, or your household. For example.
Well, that's a very, very like insightful insight. Comparing the different kind of culture differences. But let's bring back to like the people around us, the people that support us. For example, our friends. So like for example, like myself, right? The first time that I spoke about mental health among my friends, my guy friends, was actually last year. I don't know whether the fact that they knew I'm working with the mental health NGO or mental health became a so-called a trending topic last year because of the pandemic. So do you see an increase of people, especially from the friends, for your male friends, that speak up about mental health to you? It's either to you, or they just speak out, the things they tweet, they repost on Instagram about mental health. Do you see a difference through the phase?
I definitely think there's an element of like it's definitely now much more trendy to be able to talk about your feelings as a guy. Obviously I still have a lot of friends who like it's like I wouldn't share everything with them. But when it comes to talking about feelings, if they ever needed to come and talk to me about it, I would try my absolute best not to kind of impose my own preconceived judgments on them. For example, if someone comes to me with a problem, I'm not just going to be like, well, like I have the solution, I have this. It's like I'll try and ask as many questions as possible to not to come off as the expert, but much more try and help them get to the answer themselves, because you don't really serve the person at all if you do that. I still have friends that I can and can't talk to about certain things, but it's definitely much more trendy than before,
which is a good thing.
Which is definitely a very good thing. I think sometimes people misconstrue like talking about their weaknesses as opposed to talking about their vulnerabilities. Exposing your weaknesses sometimes isn't the best thing, but showing vulnerability is not weakness. Showing your vulnerability is like a place of strength. But don't obviously go out into the world and just show off your vulnerabilities as though like everyone's going to help you. Don't ask for pity from everyone. Like know where to ask from it, because sometimes like some people won't always give you the answer that you want. And if you take sometimes someone's advice, who you feel like if they're the expert or not, sometimes someone will give you the wrong advice because they are trying to come off as the expert, whereas like there are very few people that can help you, even like certified professionals. Sometimes it takes them quite a while to do some. So maybe your friend might not be giving you the advice that you desire, but if the person is ready to listen to you, spend time with you to grow in the direction that you want to grow in, then
I think
much better advice.
On that point, I think it's very important to identify, who can actually help you and who cannot. Because, like you said, if you expose your vulnerabilities online, out in the world, and naturally you have this kind of expectation that people would reach out and help you. But what happens if no one does?
Precisely, yeah.
You will feel like you're alone, like, oh, I'm being vulnerable for nothing.
Or sometimes they'll give you the advice exactly what you want to hear. So, for example, if I go out online and I tweet, I'm not feeling that great today, I'm sad, I'm unhappy. It's like you'll definitely get some people like, hey, what's wrong? Oh no, don't worry, you're strong, you're this. Out of just the response of like, perhaps they perceive like, perhaps I'm in a mental health situation, or perhaps I should give them something to kind of validate what they're looking for, which is not a bad thing for the person. However, the person who is, let's say, posting up about it, or it's like perhaps they're not getting the right thing. Again, like I'm not a mental health expert. Obviously, I've been through periods of depression and periods of feeling vulnerable, feeling exposed, feeling like no one's really listening to me, and you're a little bit alone. But then again, like these things are just part of life. It's like everyone goes through these things. Irregardless of like whatever I've done in my life, I still go through these things. I have periods where like I just feel like I just want to be alone, and I really don't want to talk about it. But then you really discover yourself. You really understand who you are and what you're made of, and where you'll go for this advice. And sometimes it'll be the easiest place to find these answers. And I'm not saying like I'm a very specific case. Like obviously mental health is something that a lot of people suffer from, and it's made to be much bigger than like my situation. But yeah, everyone just has to be strong.
Yes. I guess one step that I think like we can all agree, like, which is the right step, which is to actually acknowledge when you are feeling how you're feeling, whether you're feeling down, when you're feeling depressed. I myself go through those periods as well. I believe that everyone does, like you said, as successful as you can be, you will have those moments, because in the end you're human. But acknowledging how you're feeling, and also being aware of like, okay, what do I do? For example, like if I feel down, I think like you mentioned earlier, I'm quite like you as well. I will distance myself from everyone, because I just don't feel like talking, and what I hope is that the people around you could understand that and support that journey, instead of just trying to place themselves, look here, I'm trying to help you, I'm trying to give you advice. Because like one thing that you mentioned earlier, what I see, what I observe in I don't know if it's a Malaysian culture or an Asian culture, is that we try so best, it's so hard to become the fixer, which is
Mm.
not necessarily the bad thing. Like, I appreciate your efforts,
Yeah,
your
yeah,
sincerity to help, but then again, sometimes that might not be the best way
yeah.
to help
The you
a
try to
person.
become the fixer, the
Yes,
corrector,
yeah, the
the
character.
person with the answer.
Yeah.
And it comes from a place of, it doesn't come from a negative place, but it sometimes isn't the most productive thing to do for
Mm.
someone.
Mm-hmm.
Before you get all the variables down.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I'm someone who's like a student of neurolinguistic programming,
Wow. Okay.
and I'm very, very fascinated with like every single thing that it teaches us. Just because like every single thing we do is programming. Every
Mm.
skill you have, down to tying your shoelaces, is a programming that you've been taught. Whereas like nowadays, you don't have to think about it. You've
Yeah.
been doing it
It's
since you were a
automatic.
child.
Yeah.
And the neurology of it, the neurology aspect
Mm.
of it,
Mm.
is working with the brain, and the linguistic part is the language that we use to talk to ourselves about it. And so with all these elements, these elements you have, they will instead of trying to uncover, like come off as the expert, like NLP is the solution.
Yeah.
NLP will just make you discover the solution was inside you the whole time. It's just how you viewed said problem. If you were depressed that like you were bullied in school, or you weren't as tall as you wanted to be, or like people used to make fun of your glasses, for
Yeah.
example. And how you grow up in viewing this way of thinking towards that thing. This changes who you are and makes you who you are right now. And so it's a matter of just changing the perspective. Maybe like, maybe that the way that you view how they were before 10 years ago, it actually doesn't really matter in your
Yeah.
life. It actually doesn't matter how if you're not 6'5", or if you're not like super buff and
Yeah.
strong.
Yeah.
And it's just really about changing the perspective, using techniques to change the perspective, which
Mhm.
I think is very, very valuable in terms of mental health, because it can push us in the direction where instead of us coming off as the experts, we can now listen to people and take things in, and then help the other person act upon it in a way that doesn't make us burdened with like giving them expertise,
Yeah.
but just allowing, like facilitating their own growth.
Yes. Yeah.
You know.
Well, I think we have like touch on a little bit on mental health. I think we had a good chat. But is there anything, I guess before we wrap up, do you have any last message because just now you gave some advice to young people. Do you have anything to say for all the, specifically men out there that will be watching the video?
Specifically men.
Yeah.
I would tell them to try and take control of your life. If you don't know where to start with building your body up. Your health is the most important thing, your physical health, and your physical health will trickle down into your mental health. Take care of your body. What you put in your body in terms of food is your fuel. You are what you eat. Take care of that. If you are someone who you feel limited by the constraints in your life, work on it to remove those constraints and those self-limiting beliefs of you can't do certain things. You can do anything in this world, in life, and believe that you can. So yeah.
Right, wise words. Thanks, Ishaq.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
so much for having a chat with me. Right, so for all of you guys out there, if you find this video interesting, please leave it a like, subscribe, and share to all your families and friends. If you have, some of your male friends, are going through something, maybe this video would help. I don't know. Just share it with them, and to keep updated with our latest episode, please subscribe, and please leave us a comment if you would like for us to touch on any other subjects or any other topics about mental health. But until then, thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Ishaq.
Thank you very
and
much.
please, I'll see you again and keep the conversation going.